The following program contains mature subject matter and a wide variety of material that may act as a trigger for many people. It's an evil being. What do you expect? Discretion is advised.
That's right, this is the finale, the final episode of Season 2 of A Shock in the Dark. I don't ask this much, I don't ask it often, but I love doing this. And to keep doing this, I need a favor from you. You can subscribe, you can write a comment in the comment section, you can push the like button, you can do all three. That would be a nice favor. Anyway, I appreciate any support you can give me like that. So, here we go. We're going to wrap up our conversation with Deborah Moffat and the being she calls Mr. Entity.
This is A Shock in the Dark, Mr. Entity. Episode 5.
Forgive me for saying this, but it seems like you kind of got to be little buddies with Mr. Entity in a way.
My daughter always says, that doesn't, you don't want to be, it doesn't sound good you were a buddy. And I wasn't a buddy. But it was like, you have to understand, there was part of me that liked talking to this entity.
The information's fascinating, right?
I mean, think of this, that you, in your life, there's a time you can talk to a being from a different level, as he would tell me, get answers to things. You couldn't tell anybody. If somebody went by, I would have loved to say, come here, I got to show you this. You know, it was that, but I couldn't. So I had to keep everything inside. And my husband was petrified of this. He spent most of the time in the bedroom. My mother-in-law was petrified. She spent most of the time in the bedroom. My father-in-law, I didn't care where he was. So, you know, it didn't matter. So most of my time was communicating with this entity, talking of things hours after hours, finding out things. It was a time in my life where I learned such things you can't believe. And it was a time that things happened that were the most amazing things. And I look back at it now, and sometimes it's almost like a dream. You think, did that happen? You know, but it was like amazing. I think back on it, and it was just amazing.
You got the box of pictures to tell you, yep, that was not a dream. What? Aside from the stuff that you won't talk about, are there anything else come to mind that about historic stuff or personal stuff or anything else that he had mentioned?
I really haven't thought about that. It's because it's part of the things. I'm not going to repeat things. A lot of things. He told me, people won't believe if I tell you this anyway, so why bother? It's just I'm just going to repeat a lot of things. But he was amazing, and I grew. I mean, you think about God, and you think about a being that you can't see, but you have to have faith in, and this strengthened my belief in a God, because if there's Mr. Entity who could do some horrible things like with the dogs that I don't even like talking about,
no, I know,
or want a blood ritual, which I'll get to. If there's that, I believe that everything's balanced in life. That there has to be, for as much good, there's got to be bad. You have to have a balance. Mm-hmm. So if there are these evil things, then there have to be the good things too. So God exists. It's like it reinforced my belief in God.
Right.
So it was a wonderful. It was like I said, a horrible time, because it was like very little sleep, worry, constant destruction. But it was also a time of enlightening.
Yeah.
So it was a time in my life that I wouldn't trade. I wouldn't go back and say, well, I'd just like to eliminate this. I wouldn't.
I get it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the apportments.
Mr. Entity apported things constantly. Always apporting things.
Just things appearing out of nowhere.
He loved to take things.
And did you ever actually see anything move or appear? Oh.
Very rarely, because it always happened when you had your back turned. One time, Mom was sitting right, and we had a couch there this way. She was sitting on the couch. I came this way, and as I came, I saw a raw potato, coming through the air, hit her right in the head.
Threw a potato at her.
Another time, which I caught a picture of this one, a bed flipping in the air. And the funny thing in the bedroom was very small. It's a small bedroom, and it had a bed that had high posters.
Mm-hmm.
And he somehow, when you go in, the bed would be upside down. We'd have to take the bed apart and put it right to put it back together again. I went by this time, and I caught the bed just if it was lifting off the ground. And I got a picture of that.
Nice.
The other thing that happened that I actually saw was when Ed Lorraine Warren came down this hallway. We had a toy box over here, and the toy box just slid right in front of Lorraine Warren.
To trip her up.
Yeah, those are the only 3 things I actually ever saw. In all those years, those were the only 3 things.
Really, so he would report dangerous things, and also would every once in a while give you a present.
He gave me gifts. We went to Sedona trying to find people, because Sedona was well known for people that were into this.
Right.
Trying to find somebody to help. And I love rocks. I just love rocks. And it doesn't have to be diamonds or anything, just rocks on the ground. And I remember we were going by Bell Mountain, and I said to Bill, boy, I wish I could have a rock from the top of Bell Mountain. When we got home, in the back of the car was a rock about this big, this way.
About a foot tall.
And the strange thing, it was kind of in the shape of a pyramid, his symbol. And he wrote on the mirror, it's a present from Debbie, for Debbie from Bell Mountain. So it was in the back of the car when we got home. Then he started bringing me, what I did with him. Oh, here, I'll show you. These are just some of the things he brought me. A lot of the rocks I just keep in a box.
Right.
But these are some of the things he'd send me. He gave me this.
What is this?
It's an old...
Special Police, City of Vernon, badge.
It's back from the 1930s.
Wow, that's crazy.
And he loved to give me things in triangles.
Well, that's a pyramid triangle-shaped rock.
Bell.
A bell. That's odd. Okay, like a brass bell or something.
He gave me this, and he told me to use this as a pendulum. He said, use that as a pendulum. It'll work for you.
It's kind of an elongated skull face.
He gave me this very ugly... We were talking about, my mother-in-law and I were talking about, we love to gamble. We love to use the slot machines.
Mm-hmm.
So I wake up the next morning, and on my sink, he left me this.
This is a Caesar's Tahoe necklace thing. Yeah, pennant.
But he would bring me little gifts.
That's so bizarre.
I know it, and I couldn't throw them away, so I just threw them in a box and kept them.
That's so bizarre. What did and you know, as far as things that were not so pleasant.
He did a lot of unpleasant things. He, like I said, the destruction was terrible.
Yeah, and the knives
The knives. We had boxes of knives. He threw one dog in the pool, the swimming pool. He turned the swimming pool black. The water in the swimming pool, he turned black. We had people come, you know, they'd say, well, we've tried all kinds of chemicals we can't, and it smells horrible.
Just all of the water in the pool.
Yeah, and it was black. You couldn't see through it. And he threw the dog in it. And oh my God, I got the dog out, and then I said to him, don't ever touch an animal again. And you know, from that time on, he never did. He never touched any of the animals.
Because he had hurt a couple of your animals.
He would explain to me, because he said, why do you get so upset? Because I would say, you're killing the animals. He would say, why are you getting so upset? I said, because they're dying. He said, there's no such thing as death. He said, why are you getting so upset about it? He couldn't understand that death was negative for me. Because he said, there is no death. It's just, you're in a different form. So, I mean, so he couldn't understand why I would get so upset when things like that happened.
Wow.
But he had a very good sense of humor, and he used to like to make me laugh.
What is an example of that?
Like we had, this man came, who reminded me of Doctor Who. He was a big, tall guy with curly hair. And very nice. His name was Thomas. But he was a little, and you knew he was a little strange. Yeah. He had problems. He explained them. But Mr. Entity wrote on the mirror when he left, he's a nut, throw a net over him. He would say, he would tell me different things. He said he has a 12-inch penis. He said that's why his wife walks funny.
Oh,
see, he would say things like that. So he had a sense of humor. Or the night before the shamans were coming, the entire night he played. the Indian war dance on the walls in the bedroom. The entire night.
Wow.
So, I mean, he had a... And then one time we went to Santa Barbara just for a couple of days to get away. We tried to get away. We knew he'd come, but we had to get away. And there was this big... we went to this motel, and our rooms weren't connected, but they were side by side. And there was like a little space in the middle. It was like in a circle. And they had beautiful plants, and they had this one fern that was about this big.
Tall, like 4 or 5 feet tall?
My mother-in-law said to me, "That's a beautiful fern." I said, "Well, you know what? Tonight I'll go and get you a little tiny piece of the root. You can take it home and plant it." Well, I go in the room, I come back out, Mr. Entity had pulled the plant out of the ground and put it in front of my mother-in-law's door. So when she opened the door, she couldn't get out of the room. There was this gigantic plant sitting in front of her.
You like that fern, do you?
Oh,
yeah.
But he did. He had a funny sense of humor. He would have that, and then he'd turn around and do something horrible.
What's speaking of horrible, some of the apportments were designed to have someone else in the family finally get your mother-in-law.
To me, this support is the most amazing thing. The talking was the most amazing, but this comes in second. Like I said, we all lived in the bedroom together because that was the only place they felt safe, was together. My mother-in-law was sleeping. My father-in-law was sleeping. My poor husband couldn't sleep nights. He would stay up till the sun came up because he couldn't sleep at night because he was so afraid of having a dream at night that Mr. Entity would show himself to him as his grandmother. For some reason, that was in his head that if at nighttime, if he went outside the door without somebody, his grandmother would be there to get him. So he was petrified of the night times. So he couldn't sleep at night. So he'd stay up. So I remember I would be in and out of sleep, and my father-in-law let out like a yelp. And I remember I jumped up, and Bill got up. We ran over. He was just getting out of bed, and he reached down under the cover, and he pulls out a spearhead. And it's about this long.
About 1.5 feet or 2 feet?
It's amazing. And it was ice cold to touch again, ice cold. It was metal. I remember my father-in-law had it in his hand, and I looked at it, and I said, "Oh no, he can't have this." So I took it, and I said, "Give me that." And my father-in-law handed it to me. I said, "This is now my property, and you can't touch it. Nobody can touch it." And I went into the bathroom, and I said to Mr. Entity, What is this for? Why did you give this to Dad?" He said, "I want him to perform a blood ritual." And I remember on one side there were 2 mirrors in the bathroom, and on the one side of the mirror he had step by step how he wanted the blood ritual done. And I remember I had the spear in my hand, and I said to him, "Mr. Entity, you will never have a blood spear, and you're not going to do anything to Lee, my mother-in-law." I didn't say mother, I called her Ma. I said, "You're not going to hurt Ma, and you're not having a blood ritual." He got so upset that the house kind of shook, and he blew out every window in the upstairs.
Do you remember what any of the instructions were with the ritual?
I took a picture of it, but those pictures got thrown away. It was something, I remember a leaf. There was some type of leaf he wanted. I remember distinctly saying, "Oh, he wants that leaf." But I can't remember.
And other than getting rid of your mother-in-law, what was that supposed to do?
He explained it, and this is another thing I won't go into, okay? He explained to me just what that spear is capable of doing and what its purpose is, and I won't go into that either.
And just, I'll ask, you don't have to, why won't you go into that?
It's dangerous.
Okay.
And it's something that somebody could do that could cause catastrophe.
Gotcha.
So it's better just to let it go. But as long as I have it, Mr. Entity can't take it back.
Right.
So I know when I have it, it's set. Would you like to see it?
Yeah, sure.
It's
absolutely.
Jessica, could you get it?
Go get the demon spear, honey.
You just go to
grab the old demon spear out of the...
Out of the demon spear.
Yeah, the demon spear room.
It's amazing. I asked him... He wasn't talking after that. He got upset. So the next day, we took the spear to the Museum of Natural History.
In Los Angeles?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I wanted to know what it was. I've never seen anything like it.
Of course.
And he said it was from the Belgian Congo area, that the way it was sharpened, it wasn't made for warfare, it wasn't made for hunting, it was probably made to be used by a shaman in rituals.
Well, there you go.
And he said it was over 100 and some years old.
Got it wrapped up here.
I don't like people just touching now because The museum said don't let people get their...
okay, yeah, their oils off their hands and stuff. Okay, so that's definitely, it's sharp at the tip for sure.
And the sides aren't sharp at all.
And it's got teeth on it above the head of the spear. It's got some really interesting carvings in it, and it's very, I mean, you know, it's fairly simple in one way, but it's kind of ornate in another.
And it's ice cold. Ice cold.
And when you took it out of his hand, it was ice cold. Ice cold. Were all the apartments ice cold?
Well, a lot of the reports I didn't get right when they were sent, evidently, because they'd be there the next day sitting there waiting for me. But anything that, like the spear was ice cold, the stones were ice cold. But like some of those things I showed you, I don't know when he imported them, they would just be there.
Right.
Sitting for me at my sink. He'd always put them right next to the sink where the water was.
Wow, that's fascinating. That spear is crazy.
Can you imagine, whatever he is, can take something from either another time or another dimension or wherever it's from and bring it here? I mean, to me, that's mind-boggling. I think about it, and then what it's capable of is unbelievable, what it can do.
As far as you know, did you ever get anything from future time?
I don't think so. Not that I know of. I can't.
Right.
You know, I can't remember everything he gave me.
I'm just thinking that, you know, here's this thing that can, you know, take something from hundreds of years ago and put it right there on the table.
I wonder if I asked him, would you bring me something from the future? See, we had the type, I was in there to talk to him to use energy.
Right.
If I was comfortable with the being, you know what I mean? If I didn't feel that I had to be on my guard to protect something, I would have asked him so many more questions.
Is there anything that you really regret not asking?
If you ask me that tomorrow, I'll probably give you a list.
Right.
No, I can't think of things.
Oh, so there's nothing that just like sits with you all the time, like, why didn't I ask?
Yeah. Who was Jack the Ripper? You know?
Who shot Kennedy? You know.
Those things you really would like to know, but at the time, I'm not going to bother this entity with.
Do aliens exist? Anything?
But you know, he was very strange because he would listen to everything we'd say. I remember one time my husband said, "Oh, we're going to go watch the fireworks tonight. We got to be there at 7 o'clock." Because we tried to live a normal life if we could, but still we were isolated.
Right.
Because we couldn't be with people. I'll tell you a story about when we did visit somebody. And Mr. Entity writes on the mirror, the fireworks aren't tonight. They're not till tomorrow. So he'd be this thing that could tell me past, present, future, and yet he would say mundane things like, "No, don't go out there tonight because it's not going to be there tonight."
It's like your personal assistant, your Siri.
Yeah. So it was strange. It was like people would say, "Well, this is everybody that I talk to." Even on the radio now, when I talk to people, the first thing is, "Oh, it must be a demon." But I think of demons as being these evil, terrible things that swear and do horrible things. I don't think of demons as being this presence that almost has two sides. Yes, he can do these evil, but then there's the side of him that's intelligent and talks and wants to communicate. I don't think of a demon like that. So I don't know what Mr. Entity was.
Because when you think about demons, you think about them doing exclusively bad things, you know, this seems more like a presence that was owed something, and it had come to collect it, and it would get pissed off if you know, things that weren't going his way, and would joke around when everything was fine.
So it was right. And when it finally came time for him, like I said, this is another thing that made me think, this is a demon? I said to him, well, Gary offered to take him with him.
Okay, two things real quickly. Number one, tell me about visiting somebody else. What would happen?
We went, this was at near the beginning when the things were first happening, and we didn't realize how expensive it was going to be yet. We went to visit the Colonel and Lois. Her name was Lois, that was it. We went to their house, and we were there. Nothing happened while we were there. It was a nice little visit. We came home and sitting on the kitchen table is the Colonel's wallet. How are we going to go back and give him his wallet and say, "Oh, by the way,
oops,
we took your wallet with us"?
Right.
So he would put you in situations that made it so uncomfortable that you would stay away from people.
Right.
So his first thing was isolate. So he isolated us. And so we had it because first, and we helped ourselves being isolated because Ma didn't want to tell anybody what was going on.
Right.
So that isolated us, and then him doing these strange, embarrassing things isolated us. So it was like 6-7 years of being isolated.
And tell me how all of this ended for you.
Would you like to hear about Dr. Baglini first?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
Dr. Baglini, I don't know how we got in touch with her. I think it was from maybe the Bodie bookstore or some bookstore told us about her. But she was absolutely amazing.
Basically, you had every person who was the biggest...
University.
Yeah.
Thelma Moss sent him.
The biggest paranormal investigators.
Lloyd Arbach sent Chris Chacon.
Do you remember anything about the entity saying things about these people?
Yeah, he said Chris Chacon. He used to, I hate to say racist remark. That's how he would refer to because Mr. Entity would always, he would call Lloyd Arbach, what he would call him, Lloyd Arbach. Chris Chacon came, and that was the first time I ever saw he had one of those meters. What are those meters called?
EMF detector.
Yeah, he had one of those.
EMF?
And I remember telling him everything was going on, and he just kind of listened and said, mm-hmm. And he said, show me where he does his writing. So he went to the mirror, and he put the thing there, and didn't say anything, and he said, okay, thank you for telling me everything. And I said, well, what can you tell me? He said, all I can tell you this, there's going to be things in this world you'll never understand. And he left.
Wow.
And that was it. And I said, what? but they were nice. He was very nice. But he just says, there's just things you're never going to understand.
And this is perhaps one of them, you know,
So
for sure.
That was Chris Chacon. But Dr. Paglini, she was amazing. She came in, I thought she was pretty. She was kind of stocky, she had auburn type hair, and she had the most unusual voice you ever heard. She kind of talked through her nose a little bit.
Was she, where was she in the pack of people that came through?
She was right after, I think she was after the Warrens. She was right after the Warrens. She came in, and it was the type of person when she came in you thought, this is the lady that's going to do it.
She had a presence.
She did. She just came in like a knight, like, okay, I'm here for battle. And she would tell us all about things that had happened. We found out later, I don't know if Todd told me, were you the one that told me that she had been a member of the...
Yeah, she was the member of, she was good friends and cohorts with Anton Xander LaVey from the Church of Satan. Something she really didn't put on Front Street later on when she was getting more into, I wouldn't say promoting, but really putting forward this particular style of witchcraft, one of the more traditional ones from back in the past. But yeah, I wouldn't say that she buried the past on it, but it wasn't something that she was heavily into talking about. But it's well documented that she was one of the heads of the Church of Satan.
Yeah, so she wouldn't advertise that, and she did. This was her on the other side of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Must have been. She told us how she had a fight with, and she told us Anton LaVey had no idea who the man was when she told us about him. She didn't tell us it was a Church of Satan or anything. Just that she had another magician she had a battle with in Chicago, and she felt it was better to leave, so she came to Los Angeles. That's what she said. She came out here. She told us a lot of different experiences she had. Mr. Entity, it was another one, he didn't like her. And anything he would say, he'd write on the mirror, don't lie to my family. He got to the point he would refer to us as his family.
In a loving way or like an ownership way?
That's what I would wonder. Was it like, don't hurt my family because I'm protecting my family? Or was it, these toys belong to me, don't touch them?
Right.
Because I didn't know what it was. During this time, you didn't know what was happening.
Right.
You just didn't understand.
It's way easier to dissect things after an event is over.
At the time, really, what we were trying to do is survive. And that's what you cared about first, was survival. Not what was going on, just get rid of it.
Right.
Yeah.
So
she came, and he didn't like her. And he would say things like, she would say, oh, I can get rid of him. We'll do this, we'll do that. And he'd say, listen, don't lie to my family, you white Buddha. He started calling her names. And then it was very strange. She left, and she said, I'm going to call you on the phone for something I want you to write on the mirror. My father-in-law wrote it on the mirror. One of the cards, the picture shows it. She had him write a whole long thing on the mirror.
Words or?
Words, sentences. And then at the bottom, she wrote, well, she didn't write it. My father-in-law wrote it, but she was telling him what to write on the phone. He wrote, God protects us. And Mr. Entity crossed off God and wrote, Prince protects us. So, but she couldn't get rid of him. She said, one of the reasons I can't get rid of him is because someone in this house is keeping him here.
I mean, there's only 4 of you.
And so automatically, goes right to Dad. And she said, tonight we'll do a ritual. And tomorrow you call me and tell me what happens, and I'll tell you who the person is. So about 3 o'clock in the morning, my father-in-law starts choking. He couldn't breathe. He was choking. We thought we were going to have to call the ambulance. And all of a sudden, he just stops choking, lays right back down, and goes right back to sleep. So she called the next day, and I told her what happened. She said, it's him. She said, he doesn't want it to leave. He's using it. So...
Do you believe that at some point he made some sort of deal?
I don't know. I really don't know. But later on, my mother-in-law finally kicked him out of the house, but Mr. Entity stayed. He didn't go with him.
Interesting.
Yeah. So Paglini said, we're going to try something else. She said, this is so powerful, I can't get rid of it. She said she thought it was one of the 7 princes of hell. She said, this is one... Was that what she said, the 7 princes of hell? She said, this is one of the 7 princes of hell. She said, you can't get rid of it, it's too powerful. She said, it's going to stay here till it wants to go. She said, but here's what you can do. She said, I'm coming back tomorrow night. Go upstairs. Now, the regular furniture, everything was up there because nobody had touched it for years. She said, I want you to take everything out of the bedroom. Take it so it's a completely empty room, and I'll see you tomorrow night. So the next night she came, it was nighttime, and she went upstairs, and she lit candles. I remember it was kind of dark, just in here it was like, and you could see the candles from when you went up the steps twinkling on the, and I remember thinking, this looks just like a horror movie. Like when you see the people going upstairs and saying, why are they going upstairs?
Right. Don't go upstairs.
What's the matter with you? But she'd call each one of us up separately. I remember my father-in-law came down, he had a smile on his face, and my husband, and my mother-in-law came down, she looked worried and sat right down. My husband came up, when he went, he had a big smile on his face, he said to me, she grabbed me by my balls. I said, you wished. and I went up the steps. When I got up there, she was in the room, she was dressed in a black robe. In the corner, and she had candles, places. In the corner, she had a statue about this high of Pan.
A couple of foot, 3 feet tall, maybe? Yeah.
Pan. And so she had that in the corner. And she went all over with her hands, even between the legs. She wasn't molesting or being vulgar. You know what I mean? It was like she was feeling energy.
Right.
Right. So then she came downstairs and she said, this is what you're going to have to do. She said, this is the only way I can think to save Lee's life. She said, you're going to have to let it stay here and you're going to have to pay it homage. You're going to have to give it the upstairs, dedicate it to him, and this being can even make your life a lot better than it is.
So your mother-in-law is not going to let that fly?
Before she even got it out of her mouth, Ma said, that's not happening.
Right.
That's just, we're not paying any homage to a demon. Thank you for your help.
And this is a woman who set up the, things on her bedside table.
Yeah. She said she doesn't matter. She'd rather live with the demon here than pay it homage. She just wasn't.
That's honorable.
Yeah. So, but I don't think Dr. Puglisi, she wasn't saying it because she wanted us to pay homage to a demon. That wasn't her intention.
Just trying to help you.
She was trying to help. In her way, she was saying, listen, I've tried everything I can, because she tried everything. She said, I can't get it to leave. She said, it's too powerful. She said, you don't realize how powerful this is. She said, this is the only way I can think of you saving your mother-in-law's life. So I like Dr. Puglisi. She was just, I don't know, I had a lot of respect for her in her own way, because she was a very powerful woman.
Yeah, you just chose to, of the two options, that was just not an option for you.
So she couldn't do anything, so she left. So finally how it came down to is, my mother-in-law finally said to Dad, you have to go, because he was starting to act strange. He would come in when we weren't in the house, we were outside or something, and he'd sit at the end of bed and he would just stare at her. Or one time they had to go to a doctor, and he got lost, and he took her up in the mountains. And she said, I'm never going to be alone with him again.
She didn't trust him.
So I said, okay, Ma, so I wouldn't let him near her.
Did you tell her that Mr. Entity and father-in-law had been chatting?
And there was a part of her that believed me. I know there was a part deep inside believed, but there was still that Italian lady. That
honor your husband. He's always right.
No matter what her husband did, that was her husband.
Right.
And till the end, she was gonna stay with him to protect him. Right. And I respected her in a way for that, but it was also kind of stupid.
Right.
Yeah, so I would tell her that. I would say, come on, Ma, you know, you'll be with us. We'll take care of you, but you got to tell him to go. If he can't go get help or something happened, he's got to go. So finally she told me he had to leave. He left, but Mr. Entity stayed. Now he moved to Upland, and he would get she wouldn't even let him.
The father-in-law went to Upland.
She wouldn't even let him in the house. But Mr. Entity stayed. Now, for the first 6 months when Dad was gone, he was still violent. But the longer Dad and him were apart, the more mellow Mr. Entity became. He became more of the conversationalist.
Right.
Less damage to the house. It was almost like he needed one crazy person in that house that he could feed that energy. And the energy he was being fed was hate. Because my father-in-law hated my mother-in-law.
And he also needed a tool to carry out his work.
So pretty soon now he's in a house, and instead of having all that hate, and Dad made it hard. Dad would make you nervous being around him. You know, he'd create that tension.
Right.
That's gone now. So Mr. Entity now is living in a house where people love each other and they're protecting each other, and all that hate he was being fed isn't coming to him.
And also, you don't have that most likely person to carry out his actions.
Yeah. So during this time, Gary said, Gary was down on his luck. He said, I have to come, can I come stay with you guys until I can find a place where I have to go? Well, I liked the idea because when he was here, he completely ignored Mom.
Right.
Said, come on, Gary.
Yeah, come on down.
So Gary came, and he was here a month or so, and he decided, well, Mr. Entity was too good to just ignore. So he said to me, listen, I'm going to go into Mr. Entity, and I'm going to tell him that he's welcome to come with me and be with me in my life. He can use me if he gives me the type of what I want to do with life.
Right.
So he's welcome to come with me. I said, well, Gary, that's kind of, you sure you want to do something like that? Because this is dangerous.
Yeah, somebody who's down on their luck and they have all this power.
Yeah, he said, at this time, he said, it's my only option, really. Because he was really needed help.
Right.
I said, well, that's up to you, Gary. So I went into Mr. Entity and I said, Mr. Entity, it's time for you to go now. You have to go. And it was, I hate to say it was sad, but there was almost a feeling when I went back in and read the message on the mirror, it said, I don't want to go. It wasn't like, I am not going. It was like pleading. I don't want to go.
Right.
I said, well, you have to go. And I said, listen, you'll be with Gary. You don't want to stay here with us. We're boring. I said, and all you're getting is love. And I said, you're not getting the kind of energy you want. I said, so go, you have to go with Gary. He said, he wrote, I'll show you the things he wrote. I said, why don't you want to go with Gary? He said, he has no integrity. He has no, what are some of the things he said?
I can't remember.
Jessica, what did he say?
No knowledge, no word, no character.
No honor.
Yeah, no honor. He listed the whole thing why he didn't want to go with Gary. And then he said, I will not work with an inferior being. I will destroy him in his quest, or something like that. And that's another time I thought, this is a demon, and he says, I won't work with an inferior being? It's just like, it was so, but finally, Mr. Entity, I said, you have to go, Mr. Entity, it's time now. I said, nobody's keeping you here, and you have to go. It's time to go. So we wrote on the mirror, what else? What was the things that wrote to Gary about his servant?
I don't remember.
It was like,
Gary will come with me, he is my servant now, or something.
It's time for us to go. You are my servant now. So, and then the next day when Gary was leaving, on the mirror, Mr. Entity, the last thing he ever wrote us was, goodbye, my family. And from that time on, not a thing.
Wow. And did you, had you ever been in touch with Gary since then?
Oh, yeah. I like Gary. Gary's a little, I don't.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. I mean, has he had further interaction with Mr. Entity?
To us later on, he told me that Mr. Entity, when he first moved to another apartment, Mr. Entity put the triangle with the tail over his door. He said, but after that, it was like he wasn't there anymore. He was gone. Mr. Entity wasn't going to stay with Gary. He didn't like Gary.
He said that,
yeah,
really?
He said Gary was beneath him.
Right.
He was inferior.
He had to find somebody else
He wasn't going to stay with anybody like Gary. So I know Mr. Entity wasn't going to stay with Gary.
Right.
But, like I said, he said, goodbye, my family. And that's the end. We never heard from Mr. Entity again.
So, when you decided that you were, your mother-in-law, your husband, your father-in-law were all gone, that you could now talk about this, because the pact with those people,
Yeah, it was gone.
It was gone. And the first person or people that you told were your kids?
Yeah.
So how does that conversation
Yeah, it was
go?
like, you want to see some pictures? Remember, Jessica? So they came in, we sat down, we went through the pictures. They said, what is this? I said, this is what happened. And I told them the whole story. Not in detail like I told you,
Yeah.
but just the basics, that when during its time, we had something living in the house. And these are the pictures from it. And I got more into it. They'd ask more questions.
Right.
Finally, I left it up to them. I said, do you guys feel safe if I tell this? Because if you don't feel safe, if I do it, I won't do it. I won't, make you feel you're in danger of any kind. And they said, no, go ahead. So,
And were you worried about, by telling them, by pulling out the pictures, that you might cause the thing to come back?
I think if I really was worried, I wouldn't have done it.
Right.
I just wouldn't have. I wouldn't have put my children in jeopardy. I know he will not touch my kids. I know he won't touch me.
He said that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know he won't. He won't hurt me, and he won't hurt them. So I don't worry about it.
What was your kid's reaction to this?
First,
You're crazy, Mom.
No, Jessica was interested. It was like, what? She was Jeffrey and Jamie were kind of sure. What really went on. Then the more they heard about it, and they knew I wasn't going to lie to them.
Right.
So they understood, and they
backed you up.
They said, go, that's what makes you happy. If you want to tell people about it, go ahead. And I said, I really want to tell people about this. I said, I haven't told anybody. And I said, people don't understand that there are these things. Whether you believe me or not, I lived it. It's my reality. I know it happened.
Right.
But I want to say to you, listen, it can be there. Don't think it's not, because it is.
Right.
There are other levels, not dimensions. There are other things going on out there. And sometimes they're a danger to us in our dimension.
And did you have any apprehension that when, the book came out or anything else that might cause the thing to come back?
No.
Have you had any, what's the weirdest, encounter with someone since all this information has come out? Has anyone, called you and said, I know how to...
Todd and Jamie run the website.
Right.
And they
keep the weirdos away.
They take care of everything. They're like, Todd's don't mess with Todd. He's the protector, so now he protects. So, no, they take care of things. And, I'd gladly help anybody that needed help. If they needed to talk, I'd gladly listen, because I know you can protect yourself. I know how to do it. I know you could be okay. And I don't want people to give up. If things like this happen, don't just take it. You don't have to take it. What's the cause is the fear.
This is such a fascinating story. I appreciate you inviting me into your home. I didn't know this was the house, so I'm going to be leaving now, but...
30 years, nothing. It's just...
Let's knock wood.
You're probably safer here than any place else.
Okay, yeah, exactly. You here to protect me.
It's funny. Where it all started is down on the corner of Archibald and Arrow. Mm-hmm. It's at that big... Do you know, everything has developed around it. Buildings, Jack in the Box. There used to be a garage for 25 years that just went out of business. A new school. But on that, for 30 years, they've never been able to sell it. Yeah. It's still empty.
Wow.
You'll see the signs go up every once in a while, for sale, and then they'll come down, and then they'll go right back up again.
Interesting.
So it's strange.
One lot, everything. It's a weird blank area, and a completely developed neighborhood where it just, for some reason, one reason or another, it goes up for sale, and the sign, and then it gets sold, and then the signs go right back up again.
Every once in a while, are you going in the bathroom thinking, oh God, there might be something up on the mirror?
This is the truth. When the 2 years, after 2 years after Mr. Entity left, it was like, I would go by the mirror and say, because you're so used to that. That was your life. That you look, was he talking to me again?
Right.
And it was like it took a long time for you to know he wasn't here. My husband, till the day he died, because it left scars on my mother-in-law.
Of course.
To the day he died, he couldn't leave the bedroom at nighttime without one of his children or myself being with him.
Wow.
Or he couldn't go out to the car in the dark for the rest of his life.
I would imagine it would give anybody PTSD.
Yeah. And Ma the same. She stayed in the bedroom with us for 2 years after the entity left, because she couldn't sleep by herself.
Right.
So when you tell the story, it's an amazing story, but it did leave scars.
Absolutely.
So there was the negative part to it. But to me, anytime you learn and there's knowledge, it's worth it.
Any of the kids ever like write something on the mirror with soap just as a joke?
No.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
All right.
I would probably get a chuckle out of it.
I appreciate you letting me come by and chat with
I'm
you.
glad. I told you. I love to tell people about it.
Yeah, it's
I really do.
fascinating. It's Deborah Moffat. Once again, the book is called Unwelcomed, and you can just get that everywhere.
And
Google it.
Go on the website and look at the pictures.
There you have it. The amazing and fascinating story of Deborah Moffat and Mr. Entity. I think that's a perfect name for a movie. To me, it's a dark comedy. Something Tim Burton would make or something. Mr. Entity. It could be a horror film, but it needs to be a film, in my opinion. But what do I know? Well, that wraps up Season 2 of A Shock in the Dark, which could only mean one thing. Almost time for Season 3. Season 3 will be your stories. Your true stories of paranormal stuff, cryptids, let's not meet, near-death experiences, whatever is a true, fascinating story. That's what I hope to bring you here at A Shock in the Dark. So until we hit Season 3, good night, whoever you are.
You've been listening to A Shock in the Dark, Mr. Entity. Make sure you never miss an episode by hitting the subscribe button. To receive an alert when there's a new episode, push the bell symbol. And if you'd like to contribute your spooky story, write it all out or simply record yourself and send it to aSHOCKintheDARK@gmail.com. Until next time, as our narrator says, good night, whoever you are.